Steve, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. We've reached another Friday. It feels like the sort of the end of the week, so we're going to sort of try and tidy up a few things.
Yep.
We discovered yesterday, not entirely on our own, that there's an awful lot of people stuck in Israel who are British citizens who went there for various reasons. Some of them on holiday, some of them working, some of them went for weddings, that kind of thing. Yeah. They're very confused because there's nothing being said to them by the Foreign Office. The Foreign Office basically said, if you can, make your own way to the Egyptian border and then just get out of the country. I mean, it seems incredible to me.
It is a bit surprising when there's been a war in Israel for a little while, but that said also I'm quite a fan of people being able to travel around the world without telling the government where they've gone.
Yes.
But in a war zone maybe you should make an exception. Right. But yeah, I mean, of course there are plenty of people in the UK who want to go to Israel for all sorts of reasons. Yeah,
I mean, the thing is that a lot of these people, of course, went to Israel before the commercial flights were stopped. So in their eyes, yes, of course, Israel's always in the spotlight when it comes to, you know, rockets coming in from Gaza and Lebanon. But, you know, this is a slightly different case where all commercial flights have now been stopped. I mean, shouldn't the government be doing a bit more for them?
They probably should, but honestly, as taxpayers, I think if you went to Israel when there was the war on, you should have thought that commercial flights might stop. I'm a bit reluctant to keep flying people around the world. I mean, we saw it with Afghanistan and elsewhere. It costs an absolute fortune. I'm afraid people should take responsibility. If they go to a war zone, they should know they might have a problem.
I just worry that David Lammy, if this was another country, might be making a bit more of an effort. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. He may do. I'm not a big fan of David Lammy, but equally, I think that, you know, people do have to take responsibility when they go to a war zone.
I get that. What about our policy towards an attack on Iran? Because we don't seem to have one.
We absolutely should know by now. It's not a surprise. I mean, the Israelis were telling everyone who would listen, including MPs, as I was, like me. I mean, they were saying if they can't allow Iran to have the bomb, they believe that Iran would use a nuclear bomb against them. So of course they were going to attack as soon as those weapons inspectors said that Iran was enriching uranium beyond the level for civilian use. So it shouldn't be a surprise. And the other thing is, it's not our first time. As a result of the Iraq war, there's a manual goes around government called the Good Operation. It's available to the public. It's a checklist of 10 questions, all fleshed out and elaborated. And by now, really, the Foreign Office, the MOD, should have answered all those questions extensively, and they should be able to tell Keir Starmer whether we're going into bomb Iran or not with President Trump.
Because apparently, when asked yesterday, the government spokesman at number 10 refused to answer a question, are we going to be in support of America if they decide to attack Iran? And they said, that's a hypothetical, we're not going to get into that. Well, surely it's not a hypothetical, because there's a very good possibility, Donald Trump said it yesterday, you know, he's going to give them a couple of weeks. My view is that he'll probably do it sooner rather than later. So surely this government should have a policy that the people should know about. And also the other question, should he be having a conversation in Parliament with MPs to find out what they think?
Right, so this is so important. So one of the several reasons I got into politics was over the Iraq war and other wars. I think it's a terrible idea to ask MPs to vote for war. Once they've voted for the thing, they will defend their vote. It's a very natural thing. If you vote for it, you defend it. Well, actually, what I want from the House of Commons is to scrutinise a Prime Minister who's taken the country to war. So don't ask him to vote. It was a terrible mistake. Blair had to do it because his MPs forced him, because they wanted to try and stop the Iraq war. Terrible idea. Much better. Theresa May used lethal force. She stood in the House of Commons, made a statement. MPs accepted what she said. She continued on. But that's a better way to do it. Use the House of Commons to hold to account.
No, so I'm not suggesting a vote, but I would like to see him in Parliament actually making a statement and saying, you know, this is what we're proposing to do.
And you know
these are the people we're proposing to use, and these are the RAF, you know, machines, whatever, you know.
Do you know what, that manual, the Good Operation, would be a good template for a statement. It should go through, why do we care? What would success look like? You know, what will exiting look like? They should be really clear. Are they going to try and produce regime change in Iran? Is that a good idea?
Well, we don't know, because all we've heard from Starmer so far is the G7 sort of line, which is we'd like it to de-escalate. Well, you know, I'm sorry, when you're Israel and your nearest neighbour wants to destroy you and is trying to build a nuclear bomb, I don't think de-escalation is happening.
Well, I think the truth is we employ, you know, good people at MI6 to know what's going on secretly, and we've got great analysts at the Foreign Office, and they should be advising the Prime Minister. The mistake he's making, of course, it won't be that he doesn't know what to do or hasn't been advised. It's that he's not communicating well to the public. What people are dying to know,
exactly.
love to know, that what are we going to do? But of course, Trump is extremely unpredictable. He's said himself, no one knows what he's going to do.
Right.
But that's not an excuse for us not having a policy.
Exactly. And the other problem is Lord Hermer, you know, his mate, the Attorney General, who seems obsessed with human rights and doesn't want to do anything that would breach that kind of, you know, mantra of his. He's saying that it might be illegal to attack Iran.
Well, you know what? It might be illegal.
But I don't want these lawyers anywhere near this stuff. You know, I remember Tony Blair made sure that his Attorney General said that it was legal to attack Iraq because he thought that gave it a sort of extra oomph, if you like. But we don't need Attorney Generals to say it's legal or illegal, do we?
Well, it's very, very important to know when we use lethal force that we have done so justly. I mean, if you look at what happens to our special forces in particular, there was a recent BBC documentary which I thought was wholly disproportionate. But our special forces and others do get pursued by activist lawyers, and I'd get myself in trouble calling them activists. But
no, they are activist lawyers. You're quite right.
Yeah, but we have to be able to use lethal force. That means there has to be boundaries. What's required, of course, is sensible legal advice. And if you're not getting sensible legal advice, get a different lawyer. But international law, as we know, it's not like domestic law. It's very susceptible to interpretation.
No, it absolutely is. And I think the trouble is we've now got a government of lawyers, you know, which is not what you want. If you want a lawyer, as you say, go and get one. Well, but if you want a politician, you know, that's what we want, really, isn't it?
We've got progressive lefties in government, and that is always going to be a disaster. They've got very, very strange ideas about what's true and right, and they're going to make a pig's ear of it.
And that's what they're doing, isn't it, quite frankly?
I'm afraid
I mean,
so,
Keir Starmer, I mean, we've got another story here I just want to run past you. Council tax bills, apparently on the front page of the Times this morning. Council tax bills are going to go up in the south to fund reforms in the north. Honestly, I mean, if that's not a recipe for disaster, I don't know what is.
It really is, yeah. And it's so insulting to people in places like Wickham, which I used to represent, in Buckinghamshire, Aylesbury, elsewhere. The towns in the south have plenty of poverty. And the idea that we're all a land of milk and honey with the streets paved with gold is completely false. And because Labour think that justice is in these big aggregates, taking large numbers of people and saying, on average, how well off are they? They create massive injustice for genuinely poor people in places like Wickham. So it's a terrible idea. And it's going to be, again, a pig's ear will be made of it, because up in the north, where there's Labour councils, they will just spend profligately and make a disaster of it. All councils need to adopt free market reforms. They own way too much property, for example. You know, we used to understand that when the state owned the means of production, that was communism. But now the state owns loads of property.
Well, to be fair, under the Tories, the state got a lot bigger.
Oh, well, you know? And how many times...
I know people will say, well, that was because of COVID and all that, but no, it wasn't just COVID. You know, from Cameron on, you know, there was a kind of thirst for making the state bigger and employing more people, getting more advisors, getting more civil servants.
Well, Mike, there's a reason I've got a reputation as a rebel, I'm afraid. I spent a lot of time telling my colleagues we had to be conservative.
Exactly right, and that's what happened. They lost the plot because they refused to continue to be conservative, you know?
If you look at the financial projections that we have, and indeed the borrowing figures that have come out today, we've got a really serious problem. Promises have been made to the public which can't honestly be kept out of taxation. We're all getting older, medical care is getting more expensive, the cost of the NHS absolutely huge, cost of social care spiralling. We're going to go bankrupt unless we get a grip of spending. It's going to be hard. And the first thing
can we get a grip of spending, though? Because it doesn't seem to be that clear from Labour what they're going to do. They keep saying they're going to save money, but they don't.
Well, so they're not really the party of saving money from the government, are they?
They're not.
But to give them their credit, they decided that they would reduce winter fuel payments to better off pensioners. And the Conservative Party and Reform decided to oppose that for merely political purposes. But honestly, if we can't stop paying winter fuel payments to people who don't need it, how are we ever going to get
Don't you think they could have done that better? Because they didn't say they were stopping it for better off people. They said that we're just stopping it.
Well, they certainly could.
And we actually said to them, because I had people on from all sorts of Help the Aged and charities around the country who said, look, they can do this, nobody's going to have a problem with it, but they've got to do it differently. They've got to give it a bit of time, give it a year so that people can sort of get ready for it, and also, you know, make sure the people who do need it get it. And that's not what they did.
Yeah, absolutely. So if it was me, I would have stood up and said, look, we've got a serious problem in this country. Here are the financial projections. They lead to ruin. But what we're going to do is look after the people who need looking after. The purpose of the government is to maximise the well-being of everyone. That means lower taxes for those who can look after themselves, and for those who can't look after themselves, we're going to make sure you can heat your home, you don't die of the cold. So we're going to rebalance these benefits for pensioners towards those who are genuinely poor. And if you positioned it like that, it would have been a thing that actually everyone would have understood.
People would have gone fine.
But honestly, that just points to the nonsense of politics. I mean, the Ed Miliband's now going to have to go for oil and gas. Well, of course he is going to have to go.
Of course he is.
But in opposition...
Makes him look idiotic.
And it is idiotic. But idiot politicians, I'm afraid, do what is expedient in the moment when they're in opposition. If they would just think and do what was right, the public might have a bit of more respect.
Well, we talked... Deanna Davison was in earlier this morning because she's over visiting from Brazil, doing the papers with me, and I was saying to her, people have lost faith in politicians. They really have.
Well,
as a result of all manner of things, but largely down to the fact that people think that they talk down to them, people think that they tell lies, they don't do what they said they were going to do. And we asked the question, how we, she asked the question, well, how do we get that trust back? Well, and that's a really good question, because I don't know the answer to that.
Well, so that was been very, very close to my heart, this one, because I got into politics only because I was so fed up with politics and politicians. I thought, emigrate, there's nowhere to go. Sit at home moaning, I don't want to be bitter, or I can stand and try and do it myself. I always had 5 tests of everything I said or wrote. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it beneficial? Is it rightly motivated? And do I have permission? And the only one that's hard is permission, because you don't need your opponent's permission to criticise them. If only politicians would behave with a bit more integrity. Now, I'm not going to say I never made a mistake. I'm not going to say I never did things that people disagreed with.
But you get forgiven for that.
But but if you're earnest, I definitely think I've got a reputation for earnestness. But I'm afraid the machine politics we face, where people just try and persuade the swing voters with what seems expedient, that kind of politics is dying, because people are not fools, they can see right through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a bit of breaking news for you. Pro-Palestine protesters, this will shock you, have broken into RAF Brize Norton and damaged 2 military planes. Palestine Action said 2 of its activists had broken into the RAF base in Oxfordshire and sprayed red paint into the engines of 2 Airbus Voyager aircraft. I think we've got some footage of it happening right here. I don't know if this is their footage, but it's I'm not seeing it yet. Is it coming in? Have we got it? We haven't got it yet. I mean, how does that happen? How does RAF Brize Norton allow these people to get into the... here we are. This is obviously their footage, I'm guessing. How on earth do you break into an RAF base? Isn't there supposed to be guards on it?
Well, there absolutely are guards. I mean, I'm ex-Air Force, and there are guards, there are armed guards. But
so you're familiar with Brize Norton, presumably?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I lived at Brize Norton when my wife was there. But it's a very, very large airfield with fences all around the outside, and it's conceivable that they turned up, cut the fence and got in.
Well, that shouldn't be able to happen, though, should it?
Well, you'd like to think that it couldn't happen. Certainly, during a war, you would not want special forces nipping over the fence and doing worse.
No,
but what I would say with these guys, they're jolly lucky that they, because there is lethal forces available. I mean, obviously not against people who aren't a lethal threat, but they should be very, very careful.
But it could happen.
It could if a mistake was made, and that is a very, very expensive bit of criminal damage we're looking at there.
It really is.
It's reckless and wrong, and they should be prosecuted to the absolute limit of the law. Yeah,
absolutely right. We'll bring you updates on that as we get it. I don't know whether they've been taken into custody. I don't know whether anybody knows any more about that, but we'll get more on it very shortly. Let's talk about Vicky Foxcroft. This is the Labour whip who resigned yesterday. She's Labour MP for Lewisham North, thought to be a fairly key part of the kind of the Labour machine, if you like, in Westminster.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us what you make of it.
Well, she's a sensible person. We're only on nodding acquaintance, but she was in opposition, the Shadow Disability Minister, so she's had a lot to say about disability benefits. And she's also been a whip, so she knows intimately how the whip's office works. As a convention, whips do not resign. They are very, very tightly bound to one another, because their job is to get their colleagues to vote for the business, whatever it is. So it's very, very significant that a member of the Labour whip's office has resigned and taken what for them is the moral high ground.
And this is over the disability cuts.
Over the disability cuts. What is she going to do now? Because if she decides to start organising disgruntled Labour MPs, perhaps Labour MPs, as you indicated, who think they might not win their seat again, people who've got a lot of voters on the left telling them not to cut disability benefits, because it's absolutely not what Labour does. If she starts organising, I think she could very rapidly get to 80 plus MPs willing to rebel. And Labour's majority is 165.
I was going to say it's about half. Isn't it?
Sounds huge, doesn't it? But I know from my own experience that particularly when it's a sweet spot issue like this, you know, do they really want to be voting for bombs, not benefits?
Right.
If she was,
and that's what it will look like, won't it?
Yeah, and that is what they're doing. Why? Well, the real world's caught up with them, but this could be an incredibly significant moment for the Labour Party.
Yeah.
The Labour whips have been absolutely ruthless in suppressing and purging dissent out of the Labour Party in Parliament, because they know that once MPs realise that there's no consequences if you rebel, other than your reputation, but the sky doesn't fall in.
Right.
Your colleagues are a bit grumpy for a few days and then you all move on. Yeah. So they've withdrawn the whip from left-wing MPs and so on, which means they can't stand again as a Labour candidate. So they've been utterly ruthless and politically brutal. Well, now one of their own has left the whip's office. Yeah. So how grimly determined is she going to be to make the point? She now must rebel herself, but will she start organising? Will she start standing up for it? Because her colleagues are going to impress upon her the need to look after them and provide leadership. Well, will she do it? If she does decide to do it, she might become a very important force in the Labour Party. If she starts getting 80, 90, 100 Labour MPs on WhatsApp groups, she could run rings around the Labour whips, and I bet they know it.
And that also puts even more pressure on Keir Starmer, who's already feeling pressure from all sorts of different places, isn't
Absolutely,
he?
yeah.
And we know now the buckles to it, because, you know, these are the same Labour whips who made everybody vote in January, or was it later, slightly later than that, against having a national inquiry into the grooming gangs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, being a politician is absolutely brutal, because the public are very clear what they want from you. I mean, admittedly, not all 75,000 constituents at once, thank goodness, but your inbox is always full of the most strident advice on what you should do. Right. So being an MP, you really are in the crucible. It's a choice. They don't deserve sympathy. You know, you choose to be on the hot seat. So what are they going to do? You're always being pushed pillar to post. Keir Starmer, of course, has got the problem that he needs to maintain discipline in his party. He has to maintain that by giving MPs a little bit of what they want, because, of course, you only go into Parliament to try and get something done. Right. So let's not pretend it's easy for any Prime Minister. It's hard. But this could be a turning point, because, as I say, the Labour whips are an incredible operation. Ruthless, determined, efficient. They have absolutely kept that Labour Party together and disciplined. Yeah. But now, as I say, one of their own has resigned from the whip's office. What she does now will really determine the Labour Party's future in this Parliament.
And you said it, bombs, not benefits. You know, that's not what they stand for, supposedly. So
that's not what they stand for,
problem.
But they've been trying to... This is where they catch themselves out. They've been too clever by half. For months and months, since before the election, they've been trying to position to the Conservative Party's right, which unfortunately has not been very difficult. No. But they've been trying to position to our right in order to turn a broad and shallow majority into a deep one, trying to make themselves the party of government. Well, it looks laughable now, doesn't it?
It does.
But in all this posturing to the right, that's asked a lot of left-wing Labour MPs. It's asked a lot of Blairite Labour MPs. I'm afraid I can't help smiling. The miserable things, the horrible things they've said to Tory MPs over the years, well, now it's going to come back and bite them.
Well, some of the rhetoric on immigration, you know, is something that they would have absolutely castigated.
Oh, look, if Labour had been a bit more sensible, everyone in the House of Commons contributes to defining where the terrain of political debate is, especially the Leader of the Opposition and the shadow front bench. So if the Labour Party had been just a bit more sensible over 14 years, people would have respected them a bit more. They wouldn't look fools now, and we would have achieved a lot more. Because it's all very well, people might say, oh, well, you had power. Well, it's true we had a majority, but I'm afraid the way that democracy works, with swing voters deciding whether MPs are elected or not, it does matter where the Labour Party puts the terrain of debate and where the Conservative and Reform put it. It really matters to what happens. So in these circumstances, it's really important that the Conservative Party is forward-thinking. They need to back benefit cuts. They need to back them because it's right, because we need to control spending. That will mean that the Labour Party starts fragmenting. They'll end up with a growing group of dissident Labour MPs in a position of hopelessness. They can't win any votes, but they're getting lots of pressure from their colleagues. The public will be egging them on. It's a real powder keg of politics.
Yeah, fascinating. Great to see you, Steve. Thank you very much indeed. Former Conservative Government Minister, of course, Steve Baker.